Nothing will stop you from being creative so effectively as the fear of making a mistake.
Well, thanks so much for getting on the podcast today so we can chat. I've been looking at a lot of your episodes, and it's amazing how you really just want to dive in deep with creative minds. And
Oh,
I've
it's a lot of fun.
yeah, that's exactly what I do as well. And I love to hear your background, a little bit about yourself and your background in creativity and in podcasting, and also what's a moment in your life that you're most proud of.
Well, there's, I guess it's a lot to unpack with that question, but
Yeah.
my background is, I first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I love to talk to other podcasters that are kind of in the same orbit
Yeah.
of talking to creatives. But I am a trial lawyer by day.
Mm.
I represent a big part of my practice is I represent survivors of sexual abuse
Mm.
against the Catholic Church, and it's an unfortunate, you know, reality that we need that type of specialty area of law. But that's what I do. Been doing that for the last 20 years. But before that, I was a musician. I am a musician still today. I play guitar and piano. I write. I have a creative spirit, and I think that our careers sometimes will are they're selfish creatures. These things they pull from our soul. They'll take everything that we give it and more. And when you get sucked into a career path, sometimes you lose sight of what is really important in life, and that
Mm.
is tapping into who we really are. And sometimes creativity helps us do that. So I am just fascinated by folks who have made the leap from hobby into professional artist, whether it's
Mm.
painter, musician, filmmaker, and they're doing it full time with no plan B. And I love it. I love that type of courage and hearing about their journey. So that's why I started the podcast.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And then what would you say is like during this whole time that you've been working with your own podcast has been a moment that, really sparked your creative, I would say inspiration or motivation?
Well, I think the the humanizing part of the process is when you talk to folks who literally are Oscar-winning film directors or Rock and
Mhm.
Roll Hall of Fame inductees, and we sort of mythologize these people in a way when they're kind of far away from us, and they're not accessible, they're not reachable, and so they seem like these just inherently gifted people that are a lot different than us. But when you talk to them, you get a sense of their humanity. And when that happens, it's like these are just regular people.
Mhm.
And the only difference between them and you is that they actually jumped in head first and decided to do this thing.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, they're just afraid for good reason. It's scary to make that kind of leap. But that's for me, that's the most inspirational thing is to recognize the humanity in people that we would otherwise mythologize and think of as otherworldly in a way.
Yeah, I love how you are trying to talk to artists that have made it, who have put their all into becoming a filmmaker and an artist without having to follow a career path just to pay for expenses and rent. Because the podcast, Creative Haven, what we're trying to do is to help inspire people who have 9 to 5 jobs, who have a creative passion to pursue it either full time or part time. And what
Hmm.
I've learned is that there are people who would like to just experience creativity on a part-time basis,
Hmm.
on at nighttime on the weekend, and there's nothing wrong with that. Before I was the type of artist that said you're all in or you're not an artist.
Yeah.
But I've totally evolved from that because I found that creativity, it works in very different ways. There's people who can use their creativity towards a livelihood and make a career out of it. I'm lucky to have a video production and content strategy company, and it's taken me to amazing places and have an amazing life that I appreciate and I'm really grateful for. And I see how other people who have outstanding careers and they're completely happy with just painting at home at night and on the weekends. And to me, I love being open to the idea of creativity doesn't have to be, or being an artist doesn't have to be a full-time thing. Sometimes people find creativity in their work. People can find creativity as an engineer. People can find creativity as a doctor. People can find
Right.
creativity as a different career path than an artist, than a filmmaker, than a photographer, than a musician. And so I
Mm.
think it's amazing that you're actually humanizing these, larger, more popular, and famous people, because it's very useful for a career person or a 9 to 5er to see someone that's on that level, and then to see how they act the same way, they talk the same way, they have the same problems, if not even more. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool that you're doing that. And have you at all seen kind of the dark sides of a, let's say, a person that you thought highly of, then you realize, wow, your lifestyle isn't as luxurious as I thought it was.
Well, almost all of the folks that I've talked to live a much different lifestyle than I imagined going
Mm,
in. I won't name names, but
yeah.
sometimes you think of somebody who has won all of these awards, has all these accolades, that they've made it and they no longer have any struggles financially in life, or they don't have to worry about bills, or making the rent. But everyone is it's a hustle. I mean, it
Hmm.
is a hustle for everyone, whether you're a painter, whether you're a glass artist, and I've interviewed all these types of artists, whether you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. One of the I interviewed Roger Fisher of Heart, the band Heart, and he was inducted to the Hall of Fame. And you just think about somebody who has made it to that level of recognition in the industry, that they would never have to worry again about paying the bills, or how they're going to create and still make a living. And Roger's one of those people that you realize it is a hustle for him too. I mean, he's
Hmm.
out there trying to put shows together, trying to fill performance halls, trying to keep his band paid, and that you've got to deal with Apple Music and the digital streaming and all of the licensing and everything that artists have to fight for.
Hmm.
You still have to fight for, even when you're 60 or 70 years old. And so it never ends. And it's like, it's kind of disheartening in a way, because some that myth about the journey is dispelled a little bit. And
Hmm.
but it also, it's kind of nice to hear, because it's like we're all facing the same struggles and fears and challenges.
Hmm.
And same thing with Oscar-winning film directors, or Emmy-winning screenwriters. It's like you wrote a screenplay, you got nominated for an Emmy, you're sort of in the club, so it's gravy train from there on out. Nope, it's what have you done for me lately? What's
Hmm.
your next gig? And so it's a little scary to think about that, but that's just life. We can't just rest on our past accomplishments. We have to keep creating. And so that's a lesson I've learned from talking to a lot of creatives.
Wow. Because it's actually happening now with the coronavirus and the lockdown and the self quarantine and social distancing. Musicians and filmmakers and a lot of artists are forced indoors. And so, especially with musicians, they can't travel, they can't tour. And I'm speaking mostly for DJs and also electronic artists, EDM artists.
Hmm.
And you're seeing them having to create a live stream at home in order to have that tourist-esque performance atmosphere. Yet they can't make as much money as they used to from touring. Everything has been canceled.
Yeah.
So you're seeing now a lot of the DJs and the producers and the artists on the same level, same playing field, as
Yeah.
in they can't tour anymore, so they have to create just like the up and coming musicians and post it
Mm-hmm.
online and compete for those eyeballs and compete for that attention. And so
It's true.
attention now is a commodity. And so it's hard for you to say, "Oh, I've been traveling the world and touring. I'm going to make money from that." When it's all canceled, have you been paying attention to your followers and your Instagram and your listeners? Have you been engaging with them, or have been really just relying on tour money? And so I think that once everything gets lifted, the lockdown gets lifted, I think there'll be a transfer of, I would say, like attention and also popularity
Mm-hmm.
and value. I think people will start valuing more about the engagement that you have with your followers on and off the stage.
Yeah.
And for you as a musician, speaking with a lot of different types of creatives, have you changed the way that you've approached your art because of your podcast? Have you discovered a new project that you've had long ago, or has it been coming one of those situations where you realize, oh, okay, as a musician, I just like to play and just do it as a stress-free activity?
Well, actually, just recently I started doing posts on social media that are revealing a little more about myself. And I last Sunday I posted a song. I played a song on the guitar and I sang. And I'm not a professional singer. I'm actually probably objectively an awful singer, but I did it
Me
anyway.
too.
And
I am too.
I put it out there, and I played this song. It was an Avett Brothers song called "Murder in the City," and I did that because I realized, looking at the other social media posts from celebrities and from non-celebrities who are just looking for eyeballs and attention, as you say. But I think we're really just, what we're looking for is, we want to be seen and we want to be heard.
Hmm.
And I have decided to put myself out there musically on my own podcast social media feed, because I think people connect more with that type of vulnerability
Hmm.
than they do with the standard audiograms. I mean, most of my social media posts historically have been, all right, here's my latest episode, check it out, and here's my audiogram and it looks great. And you get some, I mean, you get some likes and some engagement on that kind of stuff, but mostly it's background noise for people.
Hmm.
What people really pay attention to is, hey, this person has a guitar and they don't even have a professional microphone. They've got their iPhone sitting up on a stand, and they're going to play something that's personal to them, and they want to connect with you. And that, I think, means a lot to audiences. So I'm trying to do that. And I've been inspired looking at, like, these famous musicians, like you're saying, it's the great equalizer. These
Hmm.
famous musicians are like, hey, I'm here in my living room or in my kitchen, or one of the band members from Pearl Jam, I forget his name, but he played a song. He plays songs in his bathroom. He goes in. He's like, it's like every couple of days he'll just post a song of him in his bathroom and he's playing guitar, and it's like that type of that type of vulnerability and openness and transparency, like where you're brought into their lives, into their homes. I'm learning from that, and I'm going to
Hmm.
try to do that too, because I think it really helps us connect with each other in a way that is different and unique and pretty special.
I know, I agree. I think that now with live streaming and the way that people are able to stream themselves and record themselves through their phone and do it immediately, it gives it people are more forgiving of the quality of the video content. You know,
Oh, totally.
I'm a filmmaker, so before I said you need to shoot on an ARRI or a RED, and it has to look, 8K quality. If not, then it's amateur. And then,
Mm,
of course, as I started, as I build social media followings and brands, I realized that some people just want to hear the message or the story, and they want to connect with that person, because
hmm.
you can have the most polished looking piece of content out there. Yet, if you have just that cell phone selfie of you, like you said, singing or just uh, playing around with your dog while you're filming, or even if you're an artist, just showing people how your canvas looks or how your working table looks, your workspace. It gives you more of a human feel, and it humanizes you and it makes you more relatable. Because I think the days of the polished marketing, glitz and glamour, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of younger people, and I think people in general are tired of that. They're tired of being lied to. And I think that during this whole lockdown and the coronavirus and everything that's going on, the idea of trust is being questioned. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, finding people that you relate with online is a really great way to see past, I would say, like walls that were put up before. Like when you're on tour and you see your artist on stage, you think, I would never get to see their house. And now you're at home, you're watching them, and they need to live stream, and they're showing you their living room, and you realize, wow, they're really not really living that luxurious as I thought. They have the
No.
same couch, IKEA couch, and 40-inch TV, and that looks like a plant that's hasn't been watered for days.
Yeah.
So I guess you're
Right.
just like me. I think for you, Brian, like talking to you, it's great to know that you also have a full-time career as a trial lawyer, and to be a musician and to have a profession like that. Have you found your creativity creeping in to your career as a trial lawyer or a trial attorney? Like, do you feel I would say like a musician's mind in the courtroom or whatnot, or is it more of a separated persona between you as a trial attorney and you as a musician?
No, it's very much there's a crossover because really a trial attorney, their job is to tell stories,
Hmm.
and we're telling the stories of our clients, and we're doing that to insurance adjusters if it's a car crash case and we need to send a demand letter, telling the story of our client, what they went through and how they were injured and how they got through it, and that's finding the story is another thing that is important as a podcaster. We are finding and discovering the stories of our client, or I'm sorry, our guests on the show, and we're sort of revealing that through our questioning. And so I found the parallels with legal work to be pretty profound because you put on a witness and you are revealing their story through your own questioning.
Hmm.
And I'm not the type of lawyer that does a lot of interrogation anyway. I just have natural curiosity about my own client's story, the story of the doctor who treated my client, all of those characters, the cast of characters in a case are they're characters in a story. It's one big story, and you have to be able to put that together in a way that the audience really connects with.
Hmm.
And that means you're almost thinking like a filmmaker. Okay,
Hmm.
what if you're going to have a trial? Who are the characters that are in that trial? It's your choice. You have to put on this case, and it has to be believable, and it has to be relatable. So you're thinking, all right, I'll put on my client's best friend from high school. They're very credible. They knew the person before the accident. Or I'm going to put on this doctor, but not that doctor, because this doctor actually knows they're like a professor and they know how to teach about
Hmm.
medical concepts. So there's a ton of crossover, and I think you're right when you talked about creativity in engineering. I think engineers have to be storytellers too. I mean,
Hmm.
there's story in everything that we do, professionally and personally and creatively, and the power of story. And that's why I'm drawn towards film.
Hmm.
That's why I go to the Sundance Film Festival as much as I can, and I watch as many movies and television series as I can, because I love being pulled into a story that's very well crafted. So I don't think there has to be a separation
Hmm.
between your creative self, personally, and then your professional life. I think you can just use your creativity to be better at what you do professionally.
No, I agree, and I think that for you to say that, especially when it comes to law and being in the courtroom and utilizing storytelling to really help your case and really help you be successful in your profession, it's inspiring because why I really wanted to start, Creative Haven was to inspire to give people have people value creativity. I want people to value creativity, because I think that there are times where creativity or being an artist can look down upon because of hey, you're not making money, or you picked a career that that most of society doesn't really respect, because I think deep down inside they would love to be an artist, but they don't have the courage to get there, and that's where a lot of the animosity comes from. Yet there are a bunch of other things as well. But for me, I always love to talk to people and really help people who will listen value creativity and value the art form and expressing yourself. And through all your conversations and all your interviews with creatives and filmmakers and everyone out there, what inspires you whenever you hear these stories? I know you said when you see, famous people and how they live and whatnot, because you kind of remind me of my target audience, to tell you the truth, as someone who has a profession and has a love and a passion and a creative side. Like, what inspires you to put down the headphones and the mic, go inside of the room, and then start playing guitar?
Well, I think that when I'm doing something creative, it's almost meditative in a way, because the voices in your head, these little voices that talk about past grievances or worry about, future events that may or may not happen, they go away because you're in the moment. And I appreciate that about piano and guitar and learning music. And I'm a student. I'm still a student of music and music theory. So I'm so grateful for my parents forcing me through piano lessons, and I resisted the entire way. But they also forced me to do dance and tap dance and ballet and ballroom and all
Nice.
of these things that as a child I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is torture." But I came away with a sense of what it takes to be a performer
Hmm.
and the importance of being present when
Yes.
you're performing. Because if you're not present, everybody around you knows. Like if you're in your head, they know that you're in your head and they're not going to be with you. Like if you're not there in the moment, they're not going to be there. Same thing with being in a courtroom. Same
Mm.
thing with you and I talking right now. I mean, you've probably talked to people on your podcast where, they're looking at their phone, or, they're
That's
thinking about something else, and,
why I do
nothing.
video, so I can catch you.
Yeah. And
Kidding.
nothing against, I mean, we all have our distractions, but art and creativity really pulls us into the now.
Hmm.
And that's what's so special about the arts is if you're in the moment creating, it's very hard to be distracted with the bullshit
Hmm.
of everything else in our world, which is it's depressing. The other
Hmm.
stuff going on around us, the social media, the Twitter rabbit hole and the Facebook bullshit and the news cycle and everything that is dragging us down
Hmm.
psychically and emotionally goes away when you're performing for yourself or you're writing. And if you're doing it, if you're in the moment, that stuff doesn't matter.
Hmm. And I love how you put that, because I believe in flow state, and the idea of getting into a actual state when you are performing or expressing yourself or developing your craft or honing in your craft, the idea of just being present. And I love how you put that, because it does shut out all the past grievances. It shuts out the world. It shuts out that is taking you away from being present and being happy. And I feel
Yeah.
that being present and being happy, to me, is what life should be about, because the past has already been done and you can't control the future. So the whole idea of power of now, which I love that
Oh,
book.
Eckhart Tolle, man.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle. I mean,
Yeah.
there is logic behind that, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, this moment is the only thing that you can control. And if you are able to be fully aware, fully mindful, and present of this moment, you have the ability to change your state. And it's either you can be negative, you could be completely neutral, or you can be positive. And being creative, to tell you the truth, can put you in a lot of different emotional states. And creativity just really helps with dealing with emotion and stress and just negative feelings and negative outside sources, you know contributing to your health, or the worsening your health. And hearing you say this, how would you say, what would you say to someone out there who is, you know, embarrassed to really express themselves? That one dancer who is like, who is a nurse or a doctor or an engineer that has this inner feeling and this gut feeling like, I just want to dance or I just want to perform, yet I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel I'll get laughed at, or I feel like I just don't have what it takes. Or in the end of the day, they just feel embarrassed to do it. Like, what would you say to them, since you have that in your career and you have talked to those type of people?
Well, speaking of social media distractions, I'm going to turn to my Instagram because I just posted a meme. I'm not a meme person.
Yeah.
I try to stay away from memes, but John Cleese, who is a British actor and comic actor, posted this meme on Twitter the other day, and it says, "Nothing will stop you from being creative so effectively as the fear of making a mistake."
Oof.
And I think it's pretty profound. There's a lot of fears that we have. Um, there's there's psychologists who have studied the top 5 fears, and the fear of public speaking actually is above uh, fear of death. So we are hardwired to be afraid to put ourselves out there. And
Mm.
so that's why in public speaking class for me was horrifying in college. And every time I try a case in a courtroom, I almost want to throw up. Just the idea of getting out there in front of all these strangers and the judgment that's happening. Every time I had a dance recital, for when I was forced to do dance as a kid, I got the same, butterflies. Those butterflies of performance are there because, not because we lack courage, but because I think we are hardwired, evolutionarily speaking, to be afraid of judgment by our village peers who can. I mean, going back to the
That's
reptile
right.
brain,
Yeah, let's talk about it. I love this.
those
Mhm.
the village peers, you can actually be ostracized and kicked out of a community
Mhm.
from an evolutionary standpoint, going back to caveman days.
Yep.
So if you're not in the group, there's reason biologically to be physically afraid that
Mhm.
you're. And I think that translates hundreds or thousands of years later into the same wiring that we have now. Like, why are we afraid to get up on a stage at a TED talk and just talk about whatever we think is important to us, reveal anything about where does the embarrassment come from?
Mm.
So, but I try to I try to look at anxiety and performance anxiety and through a lens of, um, are you being narcissistic with this
Mm.
anxiety? Now, I'm not trying to diminish how debilitating real anxiety can be. Like,
Mhm.
diagnosable anxiety, I have family members that have anxiety, and that's very real and debilitating. But, our performance anxiety that we have, there's a certain level of narcissism to it, because if we're being honest with each other, no one really gives, I don't know if you cuss on your
Oh, we can
podcast.
cuss in here.
No one gives a fuck about whether you mess up on something.
Yeah.
What they don't want to be, they don't want to be embarrassed. Like, your audience does not want to be embarrassed for you because it makes them feel weird.
Mhm.
So if you're the only reason that's going to happen is if you show embarrassment. So if
Mhm.
you're like Will Ferrell, okay, Will Ferrell has no shame, no embarrassment. He'll get up there and pull up his shirt, and his belly fat is flopping around, and he makes fun of himself, and he's in the moment, and he's just not afraid. That's what improv is all about. It's
Yeah.
being in the moment, and there's something so exhilarating about seeing that happening, whether it's improv by a single person or in a group, and they're taking risks. And
Mhm.
sometimes it falls flat, but most of the time when you're taking risks and you're in the moment, you're going to find something special that happens. And so I would just encourage people. I'm telling you, if you want to talk about fear, I could talk about fear for the next hour, and anxiety about my own, performance anxiety, and what almost stopped me from starting the podcast, and all of the things that are associated with being afraid in this podcast scenario. But I think if we move past being worried about what they think, as hard as that may be, one way to help us do that is to understand just how little they care,
Mm-hmm.
how fast they're going to scroll through your damn Instagram post and just whatever. It's liberating once you
Yeah.
realize how few fucks your audience really gives
Right.
about this particular moment. That's the time when actually it's going to manifest as you giving a better performance, and then they're going to care more.
Mm-hmm.
So like as soon as you're invested and you're not clouding or polluting the whole performance with your own anxiety, you get past that, that's when they're going to start caring. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this is a person that's willing to put it all on the line. And that was a very long answer to, I don't even know if I answered your question,
No,
but
you did. Well, thank you, by the way, because I mean, we can go on and on about the reptilian brain and the idea of being of the tribal mentality of humans and
right.
why a lot of us seek approval and seek connection. Because it is true, if we did not have a group or a tribe, we will be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That was
Mm-hmm.
just what happened in an evolutionary standpoint. So I think for me, I would really tell people, like you say, that the fear of being ridiculed, the fear of making a mistake, that fear, it is because, yes, you are hardwired to have that fear. At the same time, a lot of great things happen because of taking risks. Vulnerability is actually appreciated by audiences now. I think vulnerability is being appreciated for leadership now.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Brene Brown, of course, a lot of other people as well. But I think that the idea of taking risks, vulnerability, being in the moment, and also being okay with screwing up and being not perfect. I mean, I go through this all the time. I mean, even with this conversation or other conversation, other podcasts, like I wish I could be incredibly articulate and every single word I said would be a perfect
Yeah.
word for that moment. But I'll trip over my sentences. I'll say the wrong word. I may even say something that doesn't even make sense. And before I would look at my podcast interview and say, should I edit that out? Should I take that out? Should I? And then I realized, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Let me just leave that in. You know, if you're gonna love the podcast because this is me, and
Right.
it should be like that because no one is perfect. I mean, you even said it. You've interviewed filmmakers who won Oscars out there who got nominated for Emmys and whatnot, and they're not perfect.
No, they're not. They're definitely not perfect. And
Yeah.
there's so much. There's so many quotes that we can go through about failure and the
Hmm.
fear of failing. But I think what you have to do is give yourself permission to, like, this happens in the screenwriting context. I'm a member of a lot of screenwriting groups on Facebook, and
Nice.
I interview screenwriters. But you have to give yourself permission to write a shitty screenplay. And if you do not give yourself that permission, you won't get past the first page,
Hmm.
because done is better than perfect. And at perfect will stop you. You know, the ideal of perfection will stop you from creating. So get that shitty screenplay written. Write that shitty song. I'm not saying write the shitty song and perform it on Instagram and expect a revelation. All of a sudden, hey, look, I'm being vulnerable. Look at this piece of shit song I just wrote. Okay, no. Write it, play it for a few friends privately, improve it, get better, and then put it out there, because vulnerability in and of itself is not going to get you where you need to go. It's one of the ingredients,
Hmm.
but we have to give ourselves that permission to be bad before we can get good at
You know,
anything.
no, I like that because one of the podcast interviewees that I interviewed a month ago, Nancy Hillis, she's a existential psychiatrist and a fine artist, and she tells her clients that they have to be okay with ugly paintings. Like create an ugly painting, wake up, make an ugly painting and be okay with it. The idea of just doing the action and cultivating your craft rather than spending hours worrying whether or not it's going to look good is going to prevent you from creating anything at all. And so I know friends, producer friends, musician friends of mine who stopped making an album because they were scared they weren't going to fulfill the expectations of their fans. And you never get that chance to put that creation out there because you're worried about a result that hasn't happened. And
Right.
so I think it's true. I think the idea of just being able to do something out of the pure enjoyment of cultivating your craft and performing and expressing yourself and making that shitty song. I know because I've got I produce EDM, house music, and also in hip hop. And I put out an EP last year, and for a few moments, I said to myself, you know what, these songs aren't that great, but you know what, at least I did it. And I said it out there. I said, I'm gonna do it. I did it. I put it out there. And hey, you know what? They're not club hits, but I did it, and I'm proud I done it, and I'm doing more of it. And if I
Yeah.
didn't take that step, and I didn't put it out there, and I didn't get the great compliments and also some criticisms,
Hmm.
then it wouldn't have motivated me as well as uh, giving me the perspective of how to make it better. You know, if you don't put it out
Absolutely.
there, you're not going to get the notes or the insight on how you could become better, because I think everyone at the end of the day has the ability to become that I would say the master or uh, the person that can change lives with their music and their art. And I think it's that whole idea that if I don't if I create and I get ridiculed, I might not be able to make that dream happen. But at the end of the day, being ridiculed is actually notes. It's actually helping you become the person you need to be to get to that point, to get to
Uh,
that masterful level. Um, but I'm really happy we're having this conversation, Bryan, because I think coming from, you know, podcasting, I mean, this is my 21st or 22nd episode. And I find this is a beautiful expression of my inner beliefs as well as
mm,
a creative. It's helped me talk with people like yourself who, in my mind, you've dove in deep in a lot of creative minds, so you know how creativity really works, especially because you're a creative yourself, and you understand the idea of expressing for fulfillment, for meaning, for happiness, expressing for stress relief, creating without fear, creating in a safe place, and how vulnerability helps you get to that point. And talking to someone like that, it makes this whole conversation enjoyable. And whoever's hearing right now, these are the steps to take when you first want to create your shitty song. Okay. Just
there you
be okay
go.
with it. Pick up the guitar, your MIDI controller, open up GarageBand, and play to that first kick and that snare.
Yeah.
Um, well,
Well
Brian,
said.
yeah, before I go, and I would love to ask you, like, how do you think creativity plays in society, as in the idea of creativity and how it should be valued? Like, how important is it to have creativity and artistry as part of society?
You know, I'm a big fan of public funding for the arts. I think we have a lot to learn from countries like France and Canada that actually subsidize filmmaking and musicians. So there's, you know, if you're a Canadian musician, you actually have the ability to make a living through government subsidies to perform and to write music. And um, you know, it's a shame that we don't. I mean, I'm not trying to get political with the whole, you know, are we a socialist country or should we move towards socialism? But you know, we make choices as taxpayers. We make choices about what is important, and I think that there needs to be more emphasis on the arts. We're spending obscene amounts of money on all kinds of things that I won't go into, but we're we're really neglecting an important aspect of our being when we take away arts from schools. And so I think it's just as valid as the sciences, and just as valid as English class. We need to have choir and drama and all of these arts types of emphasis that will cultivate and nurture the creative side of our young people. So that's how I feel. That's where my values are in terms of where it fits into our culture.
It's really great to hear that, because I do believe that cutting off the arts and the arts programs in our schools is really detrimental to a lot of kids who can't learn a certain way through testing and certain structures. And the arts, to me, it's helped me as a child, when I was a child, and it's helped me learn. I love learning visually and audio visually, podcasts and audiobooks, and I love watching videos and films, and I read as well. And all of this is that everyone has their own way of learning. Everyone has their own way of expressing themselves, and we can't just limit that to the sciences and math,
Right.
because you're going to leave a lot of kids behind who can only learn through seeing something or hearing something, who's dyslexic and can't read. And also the people who can't express themselves through sports. They want to express themselves through playing the clarinet and the guitar. So don't limit that, or else they're going to find a kid that's going to be depressed in school and not going to have the mental health to make it through. But thanks so much, Bryan. I know you're busy, and you got yourself a busy day interviewing crazy people like me in our artistic filmmaking minds.
Yeah.
But before we go, I'd love for you to just tell everyone where we can find you, where we can listen to DreamPath Podcast, and how we can support.
Sure. Yeah. So it's called DreamPath Podcast. You can find it on all of the podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify. The website is dreampathpodcast.com, and I'm DreamPath Pod on all social media platforms.
Amazing. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for getting on the podcast today, and good luck with all of your music. Hopefully the shitty songs are going to turn into that #1 hit. And then you let me know whenever you want to create a short film or a music video, we should collab.
Okay. Mitchell, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks, Bryan. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating, and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com, and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchel Dumlao. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.